You're listening to STAGR Cast, brought to you by STAGR Gear. All right, welcome back to another episode of STAGR Cast. This is episode number 14 now, and to kind of preface this before we dive into it, we've been getting a lot of requests and recommendations that you guys wanted a Maine episode, Maine deer hunt, Maine tracking. So we're doing that today, so we put our heads together and we said, who should we get on for our special guest this episode? And we are sitting down with Rodney Elmer, the pretty prominent figure in Maine hunting in the recent years and stuff. So you've been doing it for a while.
Well, yeah, I want to say 26 or 27 years of going up there. Yep.
Yeah. So you know a thing or two about Maine, just a little bit.
Eventually, you should learn in 25 years.
Yeah.
You pick a few things up.
When did you start hunting in Maine? What year was it? You said?
Oh boy, it had to be in the 90s, early 90s.
Yeah.
And been kind of ever since. Been a lot of fun. I've learned a lot. It got me out of my little Vermont, backyard stuff, and I just started walking up to them giant chunks of wood and scratching my head and saying, okay, let's go figure this out.
Yep.
And in the beginning, I only had a short while to go. Most of the time, it was only a week or so.
Yep.
So if somebody can only hunt a week in Maine and you have snow or maybe just two weather patterns, all you've got is a week is usually two weather patterns. Each weather pattern lasts 3 days. So if you didn't happen to get snow and you only had a week, boy, you were just out there flip-flopping and hoping you ran into something.
It's the way it goes, it seems like, up there.
Yeah,
was there more snow back then, would you say, than there is now? Because it seems like the last few years it's really been spotty, but was it the same back then too?
Yeah.
Kind of just by chance?
Sometimes that first week would have some snow, a little dumping in the beginning, then warm back up or melt off, and then later on some more would come. Usually from the 15th on, there'd be a little bit somewhere, and then, Thanksgiving time on it would come, and we'd pray it wasn't too much, and pray it didn't happen first thing in the morning, that kind of stuff. But, it was always fun. We also selected, like, the mountains. We wanted to be in places where the snow hit first. Yep. And in New England, it's Mount Washington, Pittsburgh, New Hampshire, and the Kennebagos, right? In western Maine is the first places for snow to hit. The air comes across the Canadian, Quebec flat right there. And as soon as it hits those first mountains, it starts dumping snow. And the second mountain range on the eastern side is where there's really snow. So that's the first place you want to head for, no matter whether you're out west or wherever you are, on the east side, if the weather goes west to east, the east side's going to have the most snow. And that's where the big boys are going to live.
Yeah.
They got to be big.
Yeah. I remember you talking, I can't remember if it was a podcast or a video. You said you started way up north when you started hunting in Maine, right?
Yeah. We went up to the Golden Road and north of that up to Baker Lake and stuff like that, and went up quite a ways. And we ended up not liking it because you had to drive 9, 10, 11 hours to get up there and drive through 9, 10, or 11 hours of really good deer hunting to get to more good deer hunting way up there. So what's the point in that?
Might as well just pull over.
Right. Yeah. So it's like, no, let's just go down here someplace.
Yeah. So
the other thing, too, is as we research it over time and started that biggest bucks in Maine would come out and say the township where the deer was shot. And I started keeping this map and keeping track of where they all came from. Mm-hmm. And the numbers per township were a lot higher in western part versus way up north, even though up north had quite a few, and the occasional 270, 280, every now and then you'd run into them giants up there, and even big racks to boot sometimes, to go with the weight. But the numbers of 200-pounders were always better where the snow was consistent and deep and really bad winters. That's where the big body deer live. And the doe had to be huge.
Yeah, had to be heavy. They'd die. Yeah.
Yeah.
You think the hunting's gotten better or worse since the 90s up in Maine?
Well, we had that low in 2010, 9, 10, 7, where it was real. Right? It was tough, and that really put a hurting on things. And there were 2 or 3 bad winters in a row, and you could definitely tell. They didn't all die, but boy, up in the mountains and far away from wherever they wintered, they just weren't there anymore. And most of them, it takes a while for that population to move back up, and especially the does that like to live at high elevation and stay there. It takes a while for the ones in the bottom, for a few of those to spread out and slowly work their way back up into those mountains and want to be there, versus have to be there kind of thing. But that was definitely a deal. Other than that, everything's about the same. Yep. If anything, I would say in the last 10 years, we haven't had any real super slammers. So the fawn crops are big. I'm seeing that in Vermont in the shop, right? Big fawn crops mean lots of older bucks later on, right? When you 4 years from now, that 4-year-old you're looking for came from a big fawn crop back then. There's going to be more of them. That's straight up. That's just the way that works. So as soon as you get them bad winters, 3 years later, you're not going to find a 3-year-old. Right? So if you're looking for 3 or 4-year-olds, go back and look at what the weather was back then and how much it affected it.
Yeah, essentially like a pyramid. Your biggest base of deer is going to be the younger ones, right? And then you work your way up. And then if you wipe off the whole bottom, then you're starting over again.
Button bucks have to be the largest segment of bucks on the land.
Yep.
You know, as numbers wise. And then 1.5s, 2.5s, like a pyramid.
Yep.
In Vermont, right, we go from right down to this little flagpole all the way up to like 3 bucks that were 14 years old, right, in the whole state, right? Yeah. And they send in the teeth. So like there's this little pyramid flagpole kind of thing going on where some of our doe pyramid probably goes up to 22. We had a 22-year-old, you know, and it's probably fairly even, at least up to 10 years old. It's a fairly even, beautiful kind of graph, you know, a pyramid that you could look at, you know.
Yeah. Before we go any farther, I forgot to introduce. So tonight we got an extra special co-host tonight, Greg Gove. He's sitting in with us. He's been a big help with STAGR and stuff. And you guys know each other from back in the day, right?
Oh, definitely.
One of his best customers.
yeah, for sure, for a long while there.
Yeah. We were counting the other night, I think between my kid, my father-in-law, and me, we have 19 different animals or projects that you've done for us over the years. So you come to my house, it's like old home days. So you've done everything from a 4-inch ermine up to a 53-inch bull moose for me. So you've done a great job, and preserving those memories that's what it's all about. I just always picture myself as an old man sitting in my trophy room, just looking at the mounts and enjoying myself. So it's
Can't
great.
Beat that. For sure. So another segment we do, which I kind of told you about, is the Shameless Stats segment. Gives people an idea on, because people like to see some numbers. They like to see the 200-pounders and the racks and stuff. So why don't you hit us with some numbers on your heaviest buck and the number of 200-pounders?
125 pounds clean. Oh, you're talking Rodney? Sorry.
I've probably got one of them in there somewhere. Overall, there are tons of people that have shot way more deer and a lot more bigger, better deer. There ain't no question. And I want to say I'm probably at 10 or 11 or somewhere in there, 200-pounders. And for a while there, I was doing it fairly consistent, like I get 5 in 10 years that were 200 pounds when I was only hunting for a week.
That's impressive.
That was pretty good. I had some guys tell me that was pretty good. Like Mike Poland, right? He's like, man, that's awesome. To be able to do that in a week, you're really giving it some. The other thing is like 200-pounders are not always 200-pounders, right? You know, if you get him later in the season, man, he's 193 or something like that. So like that part of it is a little bit different. And it changes so drastically, like 7 pounds. They can easily lose 7 pounds a week. So, you know, in the course of 4 or 5 weeks, all of a sudden things have changed quite a bit. But that magic number that everybody wants to get, that 200 pounds, is really something. Pete Wheatley used to come to our camp pretty steady, and he still goes to Maine some. He's moved a few times and whatnot. But he had the camp record at 235. And then I ended up shooting a 235 and a half. He will not give that camp record up to me. He said, no, it's not happening. If it ain't 36, you can't round up, right? So the 235 is pretty much, and I give that to him, and I call it what it is, and I say, yeah, that's fine. And 235 has been my heaviest. And a 9-year-old has been my oldest. I've shot a 9.5-year-old, and same with Taylor. He shot a 9.5-year-old.
That's impressive.
So those are our 2 oldest bucks. And then in general, most of them have come within probably a 10-mile circle. Really? Most all them deer have come within a 10-mile circle, you know, radius-wise, you know, as a crow flies. So that's been interesting. And then there's been all kinds of lighter ones and just, you know, don't have much time or never get any snow or stuff like that over the years. I'm probably, I kind of lost count a little while ago. I stopped keeping track, kind of, not so much because numbers are numbers. They're arbitrary.
Yeah.
They don't really mean much, but I'm probably in the 50, working on 60 deer, total, somewhere in there. I probably let go a couple hundred.
Yep.
No.
A lot of bucks.
Yeah. So there's been quite a few of them where I've like, no. And especially lately, there's been a lot of them where I just like, no, I'm not going to mess with that. But, and now I'm kind of more hunting legends, right? A buck that I know is 4, 5, 6 years old that we've really been after for a while. We've really educated, and he's something everybody. See, that's the other thing is I'm doing it on land that everybody can hunt, and everybody does hunt. It's nothing to see 30 trucks a day. Nothing to you drive out Tim Pond Road and you will see 30 trucks in a day, right? Yep. It used to be a lot more. Over the years, that has changed, and there's not quite as many. And a lot of the older guys that were a little older than me are now out of it, like my dad's age kind of stuff. They're out of it, or they're still in the truck and not too much in the woods. And there's fewer of you guys, right? So that has changed some right there a little bit. But I think in general, it's been fun, and I've learned a lot from it. I'm glad I did it. It doesn't have to be 200 pounds, but I like it. That's the number I seem to like. And racks are great when they're huge, and I'll take it. But, even that really don't matter all that much.
Yep.
I've kind of faded away from that. The filming and the channel has really got us into more of the video making and that kind of stuff more than hunting.
The experience and the adventure.
Yeah. I kind of like that, and creating something so that when you get done, it's something cool.
Memorable. Great memories.
And it's not so much about trying to teach other people stuff, even though like when they ask questions, I don't mind answering them. It's more of like, I wish I knew my great-grandfather. What he sounded like, what he talked like, what he did, his mannerisms, right? This is going to be a video log of my life.
It's your legacy.
Yeah, in a lot of ways. And when you start experiencing that, you find out it's nothing to do with the deer. This is a story of you.
Capturing memories.
Those deer, right?
Yeah.
They bring out the real you.
Yeah.
The reason your videos are so great is because you guys aren't out there pumping your own tires. We're just along for the ride with you. We're on your shoulder watching. And I don't know about you guys.
That was a plan. Good. Yeah. I'm glad that's the way it is, because that was a plan. And
I typically don't watch hunting videos and get teary eyed, but I have on a few of your guys' because it's so great, the family element to it. And it's really nothing else like it out there right now. So
you want to plug the name of your YouTube channel for people?
Yeah, we're Mountain Deer. I had, of course, the taxidermy shop, and then Taylor's like, well, you've been filming, and I've got a whole 2 shelves of high 8 tapes and Sony Handycam stuff. I've been filming in the woods for 25, the whole time, just about, in Maine. I started filming when you had to have the over-the-shoulder VHS,
wow.
That giant camera. When they first came out with them, Teresa got me one of those,
Jeez.
And I started filming way back then. And it was tough to change some of that over to digital now, and the boys I've been filming them since they were like talking. So it ends up being a history of them as well, and of why we do what we do. And of course, our target audience is like 15 to 45.
Yeah.
And you guys are the age class of people that are interested, and I'm humbled that we would be watched in 35 countries.
That's incredible.
That's a humbling thing. A guy from Finland says, can I use this with moose?
Wow.
And so we start talking and going back and forth, and he's like, wow, I never even thought of this. So that's a humbling thing. I've had people come from West Virginia or Florida, and just like walk in the door, and it's neat because they kind of already know you,
Yeah.
And when you appeal to someone else, that's a wonderful thing. It really is. It's not that there aren't some crazies too. You're bound to meet a few people that are just, whoa, dude, go hunting. Right? That was the point. But it's been a lot of fun. It was Taylor's suggestion to go YouTube style, and it was the right move. It was the right move at the right time, and we got into it when it paid well, And for now, it still is paying fairly well. So that part of it is a little bit of incentive to keep going and cover some of the cost of what you get into it.
Yeah.
I detest commercials, and we've never really been sponsored or anything like that. This is just something we do. And we always wanted to maintain control of that and just be ourselves. And if you don't like it, you can turn it off. If you do like it, great. We don't deer hunt 24/7. We don't think about it 24/7. We're into it when it's time. The rest of the time, we don't care. Right?
You guys are busy as hell too, and
oh man,
you guys all got your own businesses and everything.
Yeah, it's been nuts.
Yeah,
and there's only so much that you can do. And when we do something, we want to do something that's really good.
Yep.
Something that's really appreciated and it's something fun, and we want to keep it fun. And the second hunting turns into a job, the second filming or any of that turns into a job, you have to know when to turn it off.
Yep.
Right. And even the filming, sometimes we've had to turn it off, right? Because we're too busy being ourselves. We like to bring everybody along for the ride, but by the same token, this is our spare time. And this is, so every now and then one of us will go. And everybody else reads it and says, oh, that's it. We're done.
Yep.
Tick, 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 tick.
Yep.
Right.
It's
good to be able to do that.
Yeah.
That preserving your legacy part, though, is just thinking, I did know my great-grandfather, and just the other day I was thinking, like, God, I wish I could remember half of them deer stories that he told us 10 times, but none of us bothered we remember pieces, but
Sure.
That's an incredible thing that your grandkids and their kids will have, so that's
Absolutely.
awesome.
Yeah. And in the long run, right, you just want to do things that are meaningful, right? We do everything for feelings, and make sure you're getting the feelings you want out of it, right? Whether it's your grandfather's story or his mannerisms, and you're picking up and keeping that with you, or that adventure that tracking is, right? Tracking is an adventure. It's an adventure into the unknown, and about anything can happen. Let's go see. And am I ready for it, right? So it's a test on top of that. And it's also like an interaction with some non-human intelligence. I heard that once, and I'm like, that is gold right there, right? That's why you love your dog. It's a non-human smart thing, and I want to interact with it, right? And when something's so big and beautiful, that's what nature is. You want to go out there and interact with it. You want to hands-on, you really do. Not that we can't be cautious, be nice to the world, but by the same token, we belong in it, and we need to go and be in it. It's our heaven in so many ways. And it's fun. I love it. It's cool.
Yeah.
And there's so much to learn.
Oh yeah. You're never not learning when you track. I mean, every time you're on a track, you're learning something different for sure.
It's a giant fractal.
It is.
Right? It just never ends, right?
Yeah.
It just keeps going and going. And that's the part we love about it.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
Before we kind of dive into some of the specifics of how you approach Maine and stuff, what percentage of those bucks that you killed are those all Maine 200 pounders, or have you taken any in other states
No,
too?
everything in Maine.
Everything in Maine.
Everything in Maine.
That's impressive. That's a good feat
Vermont,
right there.
like the 190s, right?
Oh yeah.
That just come on. That 200's hard to come by here.
Yep.
You got to work pretty hard for that, and you got to be pretty focused, and you can't be interrupted by anything else. And for most of that 25 years that we've been going to Maine, I haven't been concentrating on Vermont. And if I do hunt Vermont, and say you went after a 3-year-old in Vermont, like 160 pound plus, 3-year-old. If you can consistently go out and get a 3-year-old in Vermont, that's almost the same as going up there and shooting a 2. Like, you have to work hard to get a 3-year-old around here, and to do it every year.
Yeah.
You got to give her some. And we got a little bit of crap once, and I'm like, okay, watch this. We'll come back to Vermont, right? So we went and just like 180, like 3 in a row, just like that. Okay. So it is possible.
Yeah.
And then after that, it's like, nah, I want to go back to Maine. Because I see this, right, that giant hoof, and it just excites me so much. The chances of it having a 24-inch neck are really good, and I'd like to see that, Always been awed by the size of the deer. And that's what I wanted to see. Not to mention, I want a smart one. I don't want them idiots, right? And I've met some idiot bucks that just kind of stand there And nothing wrong with those deer, but like for me, I'm looking for a chase. Like Lanny's waterfall buck, right?
Yep.
Where he's standing there and that gun is smoking, and he looks across the river and he says, "What are we gonna do now?" Right? Right?
Yeah.
You know, that's the kind of hunt I'm looking for. That's the kind of adventure, and it's different when that one you've been after for 4 or 5 years is no longer in those woods anymore. Mm-hmm. You always thought of that spot as that's where he lives. That's the mountain, right? And then when you get there and he's not there anymore, it's like,
right? Try to find the next legend, for sure.
You know? And even though Taylor's the one that shot him, that's where he came from. That's where he lived. And it wasn't meant for me to get him. It was meant for him to get him, right?
Yep.
Nobody else can shoot your deer. Mm-hmm. You're going to get the ones you're supposed to get. Mm-hmm. Everybody's going to get the deer they're supposed to shoot. So relax about which one you think you own or you think you need to get. And just bring that ease into your hunting. And don't get too wound up and just keep trucking. The next thing you know, the one you're supposed to get is standing there, even if it is that little button buck, right? I try to explain that to someone, especially the real young hunters who come in here, right? And they're like already starting to make excuse for their first deer.
Really?
They've met dad or grandpa or someone has said, "Well, boy, it ain't real big." And I say to them, "Look, this was the one that was for you."
That's a good point.
It's a perfectly good, beautiful little button buck or a little, spike horn or something like that, or a little 4-pointer. And he's like, "Well, we know there's a bigger one around, but this is the one we ended up with, right?" And I'm like, no, this one was the one that was special. It was just for you, and here it is in your hands. I never met a bad deer.
They taste great.
Just because they're young doesn't make them bad. We
better
love
when they're
young
young.
everything else, right?
Yeah.
We love young puppies. We love young ducks. We love all kinds of these young things. Why would you not love a young deer?
Yep.
No matter what it is. It's just young, right?
Yeah.
I people looking down on little deer, and it's like, what a shame. What a shame.
that's
We're
social-
missing the
that's
big
social
picture.
media.
Yeah, I was gonna say
That's
a lot of that
social media.
social media. I think that kind of twist towards that.
Yeah, the peer pressure and the wanting the attention and to fit in with those that you think are a big deal in hunting, And I'm no expert on anything. I'm an expert on Rodney. That's about it, right?
Yeah.
And there are tons of people who are way better. But I think that each of us, and the whole point of having a podcast, having a YouTube channel, doing your own thing, the whole point of that is that you become as you move along. Right? This is a story of you. Everyone should be bearing witness to the story that they are. Right? Who you are as a person, you should be.
Yep.
You should be telling your story and bearing witness to what you see going on.
Yep.
And collectively, maybe we can begin to understand it, right? It's nature. Oh my God. The variables, right? The variables, incredible, right? But this is nature. And by everybody liking to talk to each other, everybody liking to share and bear witness to what they see, now you can cut right to the chase. You go right to the good stuff right off the bat. And you can get there quicker and not have to suffer quite so much in the learning. Even though there should be a curve.
Yep.
I like Donnie Vincent's barrier of entry. He says there needs to be a barrier of entry, right? If I ever think of that guy, those are the words I think of, right? Because there should be some kind of little
Struggle.
thing you go through, right?
gotta
And some
struggle.
people need to struggle.
Yep.
And some people just want a shortcut. And some don't deserve it. They need to earn it a little bit, right? And then when they finally relax and they finally start reading the equipment and they come out right at the truck and now they're feeling good, right? They needed that struggle.
Yep.
And now they feel good about it, and now you learn from it, and now you're a better person because of it. That's been the beauty of this whole thing. And us being able to talk and share that is an awesome thing. And I can't think of a better replacement for deer camp,
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a good point.
right? It's like a giant deer camp that you can go and listen to people all the time.
Yep.
That's a good thing. There should be 1,000 tracking channels.
Yeah.
It really should.
Be cool if there was. Yeah. There's
That's
not enough
right.
content out there.
Even though we're a small segment of society, right? Tracking.
Oh yeah.
It's a small audience, right? Not everybody's allowed to just go roaming around on land all over the place and feel free and wild, right? It's not Texas. Right? It's not. But some of the skills and some of the things that you learn through it can help you be a really good person, and they can up your confidence, and you can walk away more whole than when you started at it. Dick Bernier would write he wrote in the book when I bought it from him when I was your guys' ages. He wrote, I hope you find yourself on the track, right? No truer words, because that's exactly what happened. It's not the only path to manhood, but it was a good one.
It was a good one.
You know, it's not the only way. Tracking isn't the only way, but it's a good one, and it has gifts. And so does sitting in the tree stand and freezing to death, right? Right, when you need to. There's some gifts there, right? You learn your tolerance levels. You learn what it is. You pick up on the psychology of it. And I know, that's where I am now, right? I'm thinking about why. Why am I doing this, and what good is it, and what good can it do? And our YouTube channel's been based on that, basically, you know? And if people enjoy it and they can pick up something, we want them to.
Good.
So can you walk me through what you're looking for when you're looking for a big buck track, specifically, characteristics?
The bigger the shape and the size of the hoof, the better. I'm also looking for a long stride. I want a big deer, and big deer are long deer. You know, the ones that really weigh up are generally pretty long, especially anything over 220, they're long. You can count on the long stride even when he's walking easy and taking his time versus when he's stretching right along. The width of the chest, the stagger, of course, is always really good. Like to see that. Most of the time, the only sign I really need is to see one track somewhere. So I want to see one great big giant track in the dirt is good enough. There's one that lives here somewhere, right? Just show me one monstrous big hoof print somewhere.
Yep.
And I'm feeling better instantly. Now we'll start our circling and looking and trying to pin it down a little bit more, trying to find more of them and that kind of stuff. Just show me one good big track in the dirt and I'm happy, right? Because something lives there somewhere. That's what I really want to see. When it comes to snow and it's going to be that day kind of thing, some of it has to do with terrain and what's upcoming, his mood. So if I pull up to a track on the road and I look down and I walk, if I dare, right? Sometimes they're right there. You got to be careful, right? Daylight, you want to be careful. The damn thing might be standing there. I don't know how many times we got out of the truck to look at the track and the buck was standing right there, right? Didn't even notice him crossing the road or whatever. I'll get out and just kind of look at it in the road, and I want to see how he behaves when he's around a road. That'll tell a lot about his age. What kind of width and breadth and the mood he's in, and also what kind of terrain is out in front of him and why he crossed. There's a whole bunch of questions I want answered right on the road right there. If he's catchable, timeline. I want to set up a timeline of when he probably came through. I also want to go backwards on the track. A lot of times, especially if it's a real interesting big old track, I want to go backwards on it a couple 100 yards from the road, sometimes 300 yards, depending on how he's behaving. I want to see how he behaved before he crossed the road.
That's interesting.
Some of them, especially where we are, and they get pounded, right? High-pressured bucks change their behavior before they cross a road. They know it's a road.
Right.
If you were in Afghanistan and people were shooting at you, would you change your behavior when you got to a road?
Yep.
Damn right. Everything would change. And then big ones do, and you can tell. They'll skirt down the side of the road for quite a ways. And that'll also tell you a lot about where he's going to go if he's been skirting the side of it for quite a ways and then all of a sudden decides to break across the road, whether or not he stood there for a while before he crossed the road and listened real hard, if he's got other deer with him, if he just blew across the road, why, right? Sometimes they just come right across the road and act nonchalant. If he's walking down the road feeding on the stuff, all the clover and whatnot down that new gravel on the side of the road and he's feeding that, right? There's so much to pick up about how he acted and reacted around the road. I want some of that information.
So you're trying to pick up on the buck's attitude before you get
Yep,
out.
and just how he's feeling and what he's doing, because it tells me how far away he might be,
Right.
what kind of cover in the terrain on that side of the road he might want to head for.
Right.
And I can get as much kind of just feel about him and whether or not it's going to be something you can catch or not.
Right.
I don't know how many times you can't catch them. You run after them all day practically, and you can't catch them. Go as fast as you can all day long and not catch them. I get sick of that. And when I was young, I'd just jump out and go, and then at the end of the day, you're almost back to where you were, and you spent all that time traipsing all over that side, and you weren't even on it. He's over here, right? So I don't play those games anymore. I want as much information before I take off and decide to go on it as possible. And how he stepped and behaved around a road, there's so much to learn there. And I want a piece of that. Let's see. And especially if it's big enough. Right? So looking for that size right off the bat.
Yeah.
And then his attitude while he's around the road and why he did and why he crossed where he crossed.
So a lot of detective work before you get on the track. You're trying.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
How many people looked at it?
That's true.
If 10 people got out and looked at that track and none of them took it, well, why? Right? There's so much to check out right there that it's worth a good look.
Right.
You know? And also you might discover something that you didn't know. Right? That you didn't pick up on the road, and you went back in the bushes a little ways, and there's a bunch of other deer right here. And he veered off them. And go a little farther, and it's a young buck and a doe, and she must not be ready yet. The big boy said no, and he turned off.
He's looking for
there's a doe that it's not too bad on this side over here. Then go back over here, right? It's extra information that you'll pick up that you can really utilize.
Hey, can you tell us a story about kind of like your first big buck tracking in Maine, your first 200-pounder that you tracked down?
Yep. That was when we were going north, up on the Golden Road. We went to Dole Pond, which is near the Canadian border up there, right? That's a place, same thing. Everybody goes up there. And I went up with a buddy, and his family was getting quite a few. Tim Busby and his brother and his dad, they were going up quite a while, and I grew up with Tim. We went to school together and whatnot, and we went out in the woods together, and we got 3/4 of an inch of snow, and we were all excited because maybe now we can find something, right? And we didn't go in the woods, 300 yards, and 2 big giant buck tracks. One older one that was huge. Had to be 230 plus. And then another one that was, almost as big. And I said to Tim, which one do you want? And I said, the bigger one's older. But this one here's got a doe, and they've crossed. Mm-hmm. So which one do you want? He said, I'm going to go with that big one. And I said, okay. So he took off on the big one, which had come through earlier and must not have known about the 5 does with one of them in heat, and the 209-pounder following her, right? Yeah. So I take this little troop of deer into the swamp on an edge of a little bit of a hill, and Tim swung out on the other deer, and it was headed. That bigger one had a bigger stride, and he was on a mission. You could tell he's going to go a long ways. Where this one here is probably going to be right here someplace. So I just moseyed along, and I went probably 500 or 600 yards, and they started slowing down and feeding, and he's right in her every step. Everywhere she went, he was right on her. And I'm like, boy, I've seen this back home, right, in Barrytown, right? I've seen this back home. I know what this means. They're going to be together. This is looking good. And I'd have shot a spike. If I'd have saw it, wouldn't have mattered to me, right? And I just nice and easy, I'm poking along. And then it was about 9:30 in the morning, and I'm like, man, I could really use a cookie. Them chocolate chip cookies in my sandwich bag were really bothering me. So I whipped out one of those, and I took one bite of it, and I said, what are you doing? Right? This could be the biggest buck of your life, and you're eating a freaking cookie. Put the thing away, right?
I've been there.
So I put the cookie with one bite out of it back in the bag, and I zip it back up, and I'm like, get back on the job, right? So I go poking along. I've got my grandfather's rifle, and I'm poking along and looking, and then all of a sudden, right in front of me, I hear this giant whistle train 200-pounder, right? And I'm like, oh, my God. And all these deer come to a stop, and I can see a nose sticking out, and I saw a couple flags, and then they come to a stop, and his nose is sticking out at about 60 yards, and I pull up that 4-power straight 4-power scope, and I put it on it, and it's a huge nose, and it turns just like an inch. And above that, way up here, is a main beam turning just a little bit with it. Instantly, I know, like, that's the biggest deer I've ever seen in my whole life. Look at that thing, right? But all I can see is his nose and his tine, but there's this beautiful hole. So I'm just holding, and I've got it right there just waiting. And he blows one more time, and I see this steam blow out into the hole that I'm waiting for. And then he jumps, and he comes through the scope. Just beautiful. And I just centered him in the scope, didn't even bother with the crosshairs, just center the deer in the scope and pull a trigger, right, just as fast as I could. And I hit him right dead center. And it clipped the upper part of his liver. I didn't know it at the time. I just pow, right? And boom, 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 and off they all run, tails going everywhere, all 6 deer just going all over the place. And now I'm shaking. I'm shaking so bad I can hardly run the bolt, right? So I'm like, that thing was huge. I said to myself, oh my God. Now back then we had CB walkie-talkies. So I've got this giant radio, right? It's this big, right? With an antenna that's got to be 3 foot long. And I'm not touching that radio because I got to go see that thing. They ain't dead. I learned this early, right? They're not dead till you're standing on their head. We always said that. You've got to get over there and make sure it's dead because they'll just move. Like, They're not dead till you're sure. So I reload, and I put that extra shell in there that I shot so the gun's full. I learned that too, right? Now I walk right over to where I shot, and I'm not seeing too much, and there's deer tracks running everywhere in the mud, and there's only a little tiny bit of snow now. It's melting away. The trees are dripping a little tiny bit. But there's some evergreens coming up, and there's a little more snow over there. And I start towards those a little bit, and I'm looking, and I see a pretty big running track, and there's a drop of blood. And I said, ooh, I'm on the right track right here. And I followed him a little ways, and he ran right into that snow and into the greenery, beautiful. And all the other deer had peeled off, and he's by himself. And I said, ooh, here we go, come on. And I'm walking along, and of course, I'm still a puppy dog then, right? I'm tracking, but I'm not used to tracking what I'm about to see. I'm not used to that kind of stuff, right? And I'm walking along, and I see the track in front of me turn, and there's more blood and more blood. And I see it turn in front of me at about 10 yards. And I'm turning and watching the blood, following it with my eyes. And I'm standing right next to him. He's over here, right? He did this circle, and then boom, and he's laying right next to me, like 15 feet from me. He's laying there, and he's looking at me, and he's quivering. And I swing over, and I look, and this thing materializes what I'm looking at, and that rack is just like this, right? And he's looking at me. And he turns his head like I'm going to get up. And the gun went off, right? Because he's bedded, right? So you got to shoot. So I pow. And he falls over, that old 30-30, right? 30-30 Savage. And he's laying there. And now he's kicking away. And he looks like a couch. Laying there, that big soft couch. Look at that thing. I couldn't believe the hooves on that thing. And I said to myself, I just shot that thing. And I'm standing there. My jaw is right against my belly button. I'm looking at it. I just can't believe, look at that thing. And he finally lays his head down. And I sing him the song. And he's laying there. And I walk up to that thing. And I said to myself, oh my God, is that a big deer? And I reach out, you reach out for those antlers, the first human to ever touch those antlers. And I pulled them horns to me, and I looked at that thing, and I could not believe it. So I turned my radio on, and I just stood there in shock. Now, that's a big moment when you have it laying there, and you want to treasure that, right? That's an important time. And I always would, with the boys, everything stops. You stand there with that thing, right? Because it's a recognition of what you did. It's not an easy thing taking a life, right? So let's just stand here for a minute. And stood there staring at that thing, and I couldn't believe the size of it. And all of a sudden the radio cracks, and Tim says, "Is that one of us?" Right? Because of the old poop right at the end, right? And I said, "Oh, yeah." And he says, "Well, what did you get?" I said, "It's a seven pointer," I said, "but it looks like it belongs on a magazine. It's the biggest thing I've ever seen in my whole life," right? Not that big a deal, really. But, right, for me, like, that was like, wow. And it's like, it is possible to get a big deer. I never thought it would be possible for me to get a big deer, right? And hear that thing. I'm used to 4-pointers, right? Kid stuff in the neighborhood, right? Yeah. And if you saw an 8-pointer, oh my God, a 6-pointer. We were ecstatic to see a 6-pointer. And back then, it was nothing but spikes. The whole state was straight spikes, my God, right? When I was a kid. So here's this big, giant, beautiful, heavy, beautiful buck. And I was like, wow. And Tim says, "I'm on my way." And I said, "I can't wait for you to see this thing." Just like, holy smokes, what a deer, you know? And what a celebration. I shut the radio off, and then I had to holler, right? Yeah, you had to do that. You just had to do that, right? Because that was just like, wow. So excited. What a deer. What a first big, giant deer. And it changed your whole world, right? When you shoot that first really big one, you decide and you find out it is possible. It is possible to get a big one. Because for so long, I was 10 years before I got my first deer with a bow.
Yep.
I don't know how many I shot at and missed. A horrendous number of deer, because I was out there watching them all summer long and chasing them around and following them and watching, and I knew when they did everything, and here I couldn't get them, right? So here's now that giant deer, and it changed everything for me as far as like confidence levels. And from then on, it was a whole new deer hunting world. And I see it all the time in the shop here, right? Someone comes in with their first big giant, and they think about it every day for a solid year easily, sometimes even more than that. And it's amazing how much it sticks with you, right? It is a life-changing thing. It's a big deal.
Is that deer up there right now?
Yep. This one right here.
That one right
there.
That
one right there.
Nice. Yeah, the one that's all faded now, right?
Yep.
That was, almost 36 years ago.
And that was your first year in Maine, you got that one?
Yep, my first big deer in Maine. Yep.
That's awesome.
No, well, you're hooked right from the beginning then, right there. No wonder you're...
Oh, then it was over after that. Like that, I just wanted to see more of those.
Yeah.
You know?
And what'd that weigh in at, you said?
Boy, I want to say 205.
Jeez.
In the low 200s.
Beautiful.
Awesome.
Yeah, beauty.
Just, something that makes you real, like, happy. And the fact it made that magic number is, like, for me, like, at that time, that was, like, got to have that.
Well, that's important what you said, too, about am I ever going to shoot a big deer? And there's a lot of guys out there that are, myself included, like, is this ever going to happen? And you try and you try and you try. And it's good to know that a guy like you that's done it so many times, you're thinking the same way we're thinking.
Right.
So
it also goes to show the mindset, too, though, right?
Yep.
The mindset of, can it be done versus it can be done, right?
Yep.
There is no try, right? Do or do not, Yoda says, right? There is no try, you do or do not. And the commitment to stick to that and come away with that every time, you're going to go without. And there was quite a few years, boy, I went without. I was willing to pay that price, even though there was probably 20 years in a row, like, of killing a deer every single year. But there wasn't that 200 every year. No way, right?
Yeah.
That's different.
Yep.
And then the other thing, too, though, that it teaches you is that you want the biggest possible freaking track in the woods every time, because there are so many clown-footed spikehorns, right? There's these young deer with huge feet, and they're already pretty long, but they don't have the weight. They're just not. So when you look at it and you say, that's 220, that's 230, 240, that's really, you want the biggest possible, because I've seen a whole bunch of them that we thought were 220 and they were 205. Or later in the season, now they're 190s or 180s, 183 or 181 with a 5-year-old. Our average 4-year-old in Vermont is 174.
Okay.
Wow.
Really?
Yeah. So, like, we just don't grow tons of 200-pounders You know, if a doe's 110 and she's half the equation, you ain't getting no 200-pound linebacker out of a 110-pound 6-year-old doe.
Nope.
Right.
It just ain't happening. But if you go to the land where the does are 140 pounds, now you got a better chance right off the bat.
Oh, yeah.
And then when you see the potential in, like Ryan's deer last year, right? You see the potential of what that deer could be when he did make it to the 5 or 6 year old mark. There is that potential. But of course, there's a lot of let's go get him. So it lowers those numbers. There was a day when 200-pounder tracks were 1 every 5 miles.
I've heard that.
There was that day. Now, if you see 1 in a day,
it's a good day.
Especially where we've been steady for years and years and years in that same spot, us, our group, fairly relentless in the same general area, it's going to put a hurting on things, right? So being mobile is great. You want to be mobile. You want to keep your options open, keep your timing open, and don't think they're all dead. All those deer were beauties last year, right?
Right.
That anybody would have loved.
Yep.
Right? You see that every year in a taxidermy shop. Yep. Those were good deer last year you would have shot. Especially a 5-year-old. You'd have shot him when he was 4. He was a pretty nice deer.
For
right?
sure.
You got to be optimistic.
Yeah.
Gotta
And
be.
like they're not all dead because they're making it through. And there's tons of them. And when you got a couple of 9-year-olds, oh my God.
Yeah.
They're giants for a few years.
That's right.
Walking.
Oh, yeah. Now they've gone by.
Yeah.
That thing's gone by.
Yeah.
Love to see him when he was
7.
or 5.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Well, that leads into another. Sorry to hog the mic
No,
here,
you're good.
but
No, go for it.
how do you guys keep your optimism? Like on years like last year where there was no snow, and we're watching the videos as they're coming out, and it can be tedious, and then all of a sudden you get the snow. But how do you are you ever tempted to like pull up stakes and head over to New Hampshire and sit on acorns, or
When Cocoa Puff says, I need to go, I just can't take this anymore, right? Seeing some sign, even if it's just one big track, and seeing it, like even just one big track in the mud someplace, bare ground, warm weather, terrible. One fresh track within the last 4 days, there's one here somewhere. That's all I need. That's me, though. Right? Most people need to see some deer. They need to see a rub, or they need to see a tail or something. You're talking about hunting in the worst state in the whole U.S. For success rate, practically. You know, and especially when you up it even more and say it's got to be a 3-year-old or better, and even more when you say it's got to be a 200-pounder, or even more when you say it's got to be a 140-incher, right? As soon as you start upping those bars, or I'm going to use a muzzleloader, or I'm going to use a bow, right? As soon as you start upping those, man, you can make it difficult. And, right? You got to love the brush. You got to love walking in a wasteland of a fell buncher.
Yeah.
Embrace the suck, right?
They've cut it all. There's no trees left. My God. When the loggers are shaking their head. And it's going to be a world of brush now, right? When you cut it. And the timber prices are so high. That's the other thing, is follow the timber, right? And what's going on with timber for access, for tree age, you know. So you end up the same as when you go bass fishing and you first hunt the water and then you start hunting the fish. You have to do the same thing. You hunt the woods and then you hunt the deer that are in those woods, so you can really eliminate good areas or bad areas in a lake when you're fishing. You can just look at the shoreline and say, "Ooh, that's steep. Let's go see if it's mud or gravel on that steep." And it's a pretty short cast, right? If they're hanging out in 10 feet of water and it's like, so it's kind of the same thing. You see the tree knocked over in the water, that's where all the bass are going to be hanging out. It's kind of the same thing. You're looking for the right tone in the terrain and the right trees to provide the structure with some food, right? So you can start going X on the land over here and X on the land over there, just from the truck or from Google Earth or from your maps or even the bottlenecks or whatever you're finding, you know, to try and just eliminate the bad area. There's so much bad area with no wildlife in it.
Just
some
dead
of it's
woods.
a desert. There's tons of bad woods. If you can't figure out what good woods are, at least figure out what bad woods are. And you'll be automatically in the better stuff, at least. Even if it isn't wonderful, you're not in something that's really bad. If I'm in a piece of woods and I look down and I can't find a deer track, even one, poke hole in the leaves, if I don't see any deer tracks, I'm out of there. I am on top of deer tracks all the time. Old, new, whatever. If I look down and there's no deer tracks, if you were moose hunting and there was no moose tracks, how long would it take you to leave? About 6 seconds, right? Yeah. I'm out of here, right? Yeah. The other thing is your boots, right? My boots earn me all my deer. They can walk so far. My legs, right? That's what does it, because I can go so far. And it's like if you're mining gold, you need a big trommel, right? Right? The bigger your machine, the more dirt you can run, the more chances of coming across it. So your legs are like your trommel. You're out there just going and learning and finding, and it allows you to turn over more dirt. Plain and simple. Yep. That's an easy one.
More land you cover, the better, right? A lot of times, yeah.
Right? That's what Lee Libby says, right? The guy who can cover the most ground sees the most deer.
Exactly.
Good point.
He may jump the most deer, for sure.
Yep.
Right? And you need to see them, right? There's another edge to that, right? You can jump them all day long, right? And that's not good enough, right? Yep. So like being able to do something about it, that's what really counts.
Yeah.
Capitalizing on at least what you learn every day.
Right.
So we may not scout or put out cameras or any of that stuff for the rest of the year, but during the season, if we're not hunting, actually trying to kill it right then, we're scouting. Mm-hmm. It's nonstop scouting mission. Plus, there's a group of us, and we're all sharing information.
And a beautiful thing Maine gives us is partridge and moose to look at while we're trying to sort that out. So that's kind of nice.
Thank God. Especially for the moose to eat the brush back so you can walk through it.
Yeah, that's right.
When there's no moose up there, there will be no more deer hunters. Pretty much. If the moose herd crashes up there, the woods will be so impenetrable, most people won't even want to tackle it. Especially with young woods, right?
Yeah.
Where the brush is at waist high at the snow level, and then if it's not chewed off at the moose upper level, well, now you can't see even. Northeast Kingdom, moose herd is crashed. The bramble is right up to your eyeballs practically. You walk through it and it slaps you, right? Bruceau Mountain, the power line, all of that, the wall up there, all that area, right? This is all you get when you walk through it now because the moose population is low and they're not eating. Bramble's not the greatest thing for them to eat, so they're not eating it, and now it's got these extra shoots, plus it's an old tree because it was trimmed when it was young, and now it's this sturdy, slapping, oh my God, mess to walk through. And I was up there a while back and I'm like, oh, this is terrible with no moose. You take no moose in Maine, it'll be a complete change to the way you deer hunt up there. It'll change everything. Moose are important to how good the tracking is. It matters because they chew that brush back. They make it walkable.
So they're eating pounds and pounds of that stuff a day.
Oh, yeah. And I don't blame the timber for trying to get ahead of the moose. They eat every tree and every cut everywhere. And if you don't, when the moose numbers are down, you cut wood and you make it grow then to try and get ahead of them. Because they do. Every maple, every yellow birch has been trimmed 100 times.
Yeah, it's remarkable how, like you said, you go into a cut and everything's nipped. Like last year I was up in Maine, and this cut that's literally probably half a mile long, there was not a single bud on anything, just moose track to hell. It was crazy, but yeah.
Wants to rip your clothes
off. Oh, yeah, slapping off the boots and everything like that.
Yeah, it's crazy. But that's just part of the game. And it's not easy to keep your confidence up while you're out wading around in brush. What helps is when you know that they do live there. And you can't let the dream die inside your brain. And it's easy. So the camera thing and the filming and that part has been a pleasant distraction for us. And even if you're at home and you're sitting in your tree stand out back, you should be filming what you see, filming how you feel, right? Even if you just watch it once and then erase it, right? And I never knew since we started the YouTube channel how many people are lonely. There's a lot of lonely hunters. Wow. Have no one to share it with. Film yourself. We want to watch it.
Yep, good point.
I've watched some lonely hunters on YouTube. And it was interesting, right? Now, I don't study nature so much anymore. I study people, right? People's nature. It's way more interesting. It's way more fascinating. You never meet the same thing twice. You can meet deer, and they're deer. They're just deer. They're not people. People are way more interesting, right? True. And they're an in-depth study that could go on forever. And when I watch somebody who's kind of lonely film themselves and how they feel, well, now you get to see what you're like. And that can change you. It's good for you, right?
Yep.
And others can appreciate it. And there are other people who would relate to it.
For sure.
And why not use that, right? Because this is your story, not a story of deer. This is a story of you and what you decide and how much you're willing to live with your decisions. Do you attract that buck or not? Do you let him take it or not? Right? You're making left or right in the why, right? It's all about making decisions and living with what you decide and the possible outcomes of what you decide. And some days you're supposed to be late.
That's right.
Right?
That is right.
Yeah.
And you decided, well, I got to have that extra piece of bacon. It's just going to be a minute.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
Or your buddy's running a little bit late and somebody's pissed about it. And it's like, really? No.
You gotta go
It's
with
trying to adjust. The river's trying to adjust your timing. It wants to bring you everything you want.
Yep.
Let it and work with it.
Yep.
Right? Next thing you know, 2:30, you're all done. Didn't get out till 9:30. 2:30, bang, you're already at the check station. Right? And if it was supposed to go down that way, wouldn't you want to let it?
Yep.
You would want to let it. Just let it happen, right? Just work with what the river's handing you. And sometimes, how many times did you say, I knew that was going to happen? I just had this feeling, right? Well, just work with it. And a lot of times it'll start off negative. You'll say, oh man, somebody's parked in my spot. Well, maybe it's telling you to go where you need to go over here because there's something waiting for you. And then you switched and bam.
Go with the flow, man.
Look at that, right? And so now I listen to that way more. And as soon as things turn negative for me, I start asking why. And why would it need to turn negative, right? If you're stoic about your hunting or you're stoic about your life, you set yourself back from it a little bit and you watch what's happening and you say, let's not get too upset. Let's just drive down this road. Look at that thing. Right? And this guy was coming out the road I was going to be on, right? And I just happened to turn this way and, there we go, right? Yeah. And we all need somebody to help us out a little bit, somebody to cheer us up a little bit. And I hope that's what we do.
For sure.
But other people have different realities, and they should talk about those too, because it happens.
Yep.
You get bummed.
Yep.
Right?
Oh, yeah.
Yep.
You do. You missed, right?
Yeah.
Here you work for a whole month. Here's the thing. Pow, right? And you get all serious. And kicking the rocks all the way back to the truck. Or somebody cut me off. Right?
Oh, yeah.
No, you were supposed to be cut off today. Relax.
No, I think that's great advice. I think a lot of people try to force things too much. They have like a certain thing in their head that they're just, when it comes to like trying to kill a specific buck or something like you were saying earlier. And, when things don't go perfectly the way they think it should, they just give up or they go back to camp or they go home or they go get a sandwich or, it's like sometimes you just got to roll with the punches. You got to be fluid with it. And I think that's how a lot of big bucks are killed.
Absolutely.
And I've noticed that from a lot of big buck killers is they're usually very calm with the way they go about things and they're very go with the flow. Methodical. Yep.
And they've got a system that works.
Yep.
And what would work for one guy may not necessarily work for another.
Right.
But like all the little things of even what not to do, right? You go to the poacher class, right? And they all say what they did wrong. Right? Yep. Even if you learn what not to do or the stories, that's the key to stories, right? Because the story not only gives you context about the way things went down, but it delivers a message of where you could end up. And the expectations are good also too, though. Like you have this expectation, I want to kill this one buck over here, and this is what I want to do, and it didn't go down that way for me that day, and I'm pissed about it. Well, right, that expectation of being pissed about it is like trying to take over, and you have to go, and that's where the buddy can be like, hey man, and we do that for each other as much as we can, but it could be something online too, just as easily. Mm-hmm. Nobody does a podcast about the bad stuff, the bad experiences, right? Everyone can relate to that.
Oh yeah.
You may not necessarily want to discuss them or whatever, but there are some things that are learning curves that other people can pick up on that would be real handy. Not to mention even the more skilled stuff, okay? What do you do the 4th time you jump a buck, right? 4 times now you moved him, or 10 times. I've had one in Vermont, I moved him 12 times in one day.
Wow.
Right? That's meeting him. And by the 5th time, he's really figured out, I'm trying to kill you.
Yeah.
Right? He's onto it
he
now.
knows, yeah.
This is, and he's a young deer, but he's like, right? Mm-hmm. That's a tough thing. What do you do when you've busted him and busted him and busted him? You ain't calling to him anymore. Oh no, I know you. I saw you a half an hour ago. Wham, right? Here we go again. Wham. Ooh, I got to get a smell of him. Boom, here's some river, here's some swamp, here's some houses, here's a ledge, and back down and back onto the ledge again, right? All of that kind of stuff that lays it right out, and the persistence it takes to stick with that, and then being able to make it come together is quite a challenge. And that's the thing you really want to talk about, right? Mm-hmm. Being able to just master yourself, and now the rest of it comes easier. The deer will come a lot easier when you really mastered yourself. And there's only one way to do that, is to just push yourself, right? To get over it. That's one of our favorite sayings. Get the F over it.
Yeah.
Just get over it. Just like move on,
Yep.
right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Just keep trucking. Just keep going. Let's please keep going. And away you go, right?
Yeah.
And if you got someone to help you along, that's great. If you don't have anybody to help you along, film yourself a little bit in how you feel. Watch it. You'll instantly want to pick yourself up, right? I've had a couple of times I was having a bad day, and I turned that camera on and I filmed it. I'm just having a bad day today. Now I look back at it and I laugh and I go, oh, don't ever show anybody that. There's some footage I'm not going to share with the world, right?
Yeah.
Oh, man, I can't believe it. I fell down and I cracked my knee, and there's my pants all ripped. And right here, right, all black and blue, right? Or the scope got me, right? All those bad days when things kind of go wrong, you got to film that. You got to film it, even if it's just for you and the family to watch when you get back home. And that's how my filming started, right? I would go there and lead the family home. You guys are going to have kids here, right? And you have to leave them. And then when you come back home and you have a homecoming, I love that. I come back home and then I say, this is what I saw. And they're like, oh my God, the promised land, Maine, right? And the boys were like, Maine. And then one at a time, bring them up there, get them interested in it, and have them master it and love it. And when you're done and you've mastered things, now you don't have to really keep playing.
Does Teresa still do what she was doing, which is she didn't want to know anything that's going on? She wanted you guys to come home and tell the story?
100%.
Yep.
Really?
You know, somebody comes in the shop and I heard Rodney got a deer. She's like, shh.
Don't say a word.
I don't want to know. I don't want to know. And she's heard a couple of horror stories that weren't even true, right? Things have happened over the years, and she's just believing word of mouth, and she didn't want it. She wants to hear it from us. She wants us to drive in the yard and we're home and look at the deer in the back of the truck, right? Or the antlers we found, or hear the stories of how things were and whatnot. Yep. And we want to hear her stories because we've been gone and what's been going on with her, right? That going away for a while and being alone for a while, for me, especially in the beginning, I cherish that week of just me and nobody else. Mm-hmm. But then when the boys started going, right, it's not like I can just walk off and leave them. It's not happening, right? They're 12, 13, 14, 15, right? And you turn them loose in the wilderness, or you go with them and you make sure everything's cool. And now you share it with them. And now I've been into that, and I can't wait for the grandkids, right? But every now and then I say, no, I'm good. I'm just going. This was the year I shot the deer. The day I said, no, I'm just gonna go look, right?
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Next thing you know, pow! Oh, it's dead. Oh, I knew I should have went with you, right? So, you're gonna have that.
Yeah.
You will pay if you have a cameraman. You'll pay. It ain't cheap. It ain't easy. They might screw you up. They might see the deer and point it out for you. A lot of times, the guy in the back, right? He's the one.
Always, yeah.
The guy in the back's like, oh, right here, right
Yep.
here. Right. That happens a lot.
I've noticed that. The guy in the back sees a deer.
That's right. He's the one who picks it out. He's more likely to pay attention to the sides. You're blocking. It's natural to look through somebody to see what's on the other side of them. And the guy in the back, a lot of times, the caboose is seeing what's going on. I don't know how many times I've stopped the boys. And it was great when I could see over the top of them, too. When they were young, I could see over the top of them. So they're bird dogging.
Right.
Ding, 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 ding. And we're going along, little beagle, right? And I'm behind them. And then right here. It's a moose, right? So we walk over to the moose. Let's go see the moose, right? So we walk over there. That is awesome. And when it's someone older, right? When I'm old and they're walking behind me and they say, "Whoa, Dad," that's a great feeling. When they're doing it now, right? They're pointing stuff out to me now, or I'm pointing stuff out to them and I'm behind them, right? That hunting together, I never really thought it was possible to walk up to a bedded deer with 3 people. 2 cameramen or 2 kids and me, and walk right up to a doe bedded down. It's his first deer. Right there. And he goes, "Ryan." He's looking at it, right? And Casey says, "Beaver, shoot it." Right? And he's like, "Oh, yeah." Boom, right? I would have never known you could do something like that until you tried it. And then afterwards, what value? What a huge amount of value to that. And now it's a shared experience. And we all remember different chunks. Even better. Even better. So I wanted it to be a story. I wanted it to be a beautiful story of me. Right? And we have expectations that help us design our future. And we know they work somewhat. We experience on a daily basis. If I get in the truck and drive to Rodney's, this is what I'm going to experience. Right? It'll be more than that. Right? When you get there, it's always more than that. But when we get our expectations up to go out in the field and to go do something, and then it didn't quite turn out the way, well, that's part of the deal. Right? This is a probabilistic universe. Nothing's 100%. Nothing is. But logic says, if I go out today and I keep my opportunities coming, right? They call you lucky when your preparedness meets opportunity. Well, if you got your gun and it's loaded and you got your license and you're ready to go and you're awake and you go hunting, what's likely to happen?
Eventually you're going to get one.
That's right. It's going to happen, right? And the more you do it, it's like gambling, right? Odds, the more you keep rolling those dice, the more likely you are sooner or later to win. So it's bound to happen. And now if you're playing on the rest of your good feelings, all of a sudden there it is. It's right in front of you, and just walk up to them and shoot them. Literally. Just walk up. They will wait for me. They will wait. Even when they run. You don't know it right now, but you're going to wait. And wait. No, Rodney. That one this year, right? Run down. Wait. No, Rodney. Run down to the bottom across the hardwoods. Look back. No, Rodney. I guess I'll relax a little bit. Bunch. Walk a little bit. Crunch. No, Rodney. Boy, it's just about time to chew on that. Lay down. No, Rodney. Pow. Right?
There's Rodney.
Found him.
Yeah, I'm back. Right? What a good feeling, right? And of course, I've already played this game a whole bunch of times with him. Him and I are old friends. We've already done this a whole bunch of times, and I'm saying slow and easy, right? And you let your outside guide, like your God mind. Right? It's not your brain. Your brain's a function of your mind, right? Your mind's out here someplace. Your energy's out here someplace. And your brain is listening to this mind, and you talk yourself through your things, right? I don't know how else you explain thinking. It's a mechanical thing, but not really. It's not the movement of electricity in your brain completely. It's not completely that. So there's this other part of you that's helping you through things. And so I listen to that little on the shoulder that says, "Ooh, go easy right here. I just got that feeling. Ooh, don't go out there. Let's just wait a minute." You come to that doorway, right? And no, right? Good thing I stopped. That first time, boom, 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 boom. And he goes across the open and stands on the other side, just inside the crap. And I'm like, boop, nope. played this game with you before? Oh, no, you don't. I'm going to stand here. I bet it was 10, 15 minutes of just standing and staring at that other side. And I was looking right at him. He was right there. But I just couldn't pick him out. And I'm like, right. The deer needle is pointed. That compass, the jack, right? The compass is pointing. And it's like, man, right there. Right there. And I'm pointing right at him. I'm looking in the scope. I can't see a thing. That bugger was standing there. Just couldn't pick him out. And finally, no, he's gone. It's okay now. Boom, 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 right across. Go inside the woods a little bit. And sure enough, turn around and stood there and watched and watched and watched. And then turn and drop, down. Aha, gotcha, right? Good boy. Here we go, right? And when it starts, when you can predict what's about to unfold, now you're reading the future. Mm-hmm. Are you not? When you're on the track and you're saying he's going to go up and he's going to do this and he's going to do that, you're actually predicting the future.
You're looking around corners.
Yep.
You got
this next little rise. Yeah. Ooh, there's a little green spot. There's a big blowdown right there. It's one of those two. The wind's this way, and walk a little bit, and boom, there he is right there.
I'm always trying to have like an internal conversation when I'm tracking, like trying to decide what I'm going to do. And you just said it right there. I was going to ask you if you're a believer of swinging on a buck track, like if you'll get off of it to try to like meet up with them.
I hate it.
You hate it?
I absolutely hate it.
Yeah,
I hate
but you'll do it.
But and sometimes I'll do it. If the terrain says we've got to do this, I will do it. But I don't like it because as soon as you leave the track, I'm losing all information about not only direction, but the attitude, the distance, the speed. And if he stopped and took a break there and did a lot of looking back and then finished walking across the cut, right? So there's this dotted line with a cloud and then another dotted line. And I don't know that cloud took place.
Right.
That's information that matters. Yeah. Especially if he's at a pretty good clip walking, and over here a pretty good clip coming out, but he stopped there for 15 minutes waiting. I like to know that.
Right. Mm-hmm.
I hate I want to be on the track as much as absolutely possible. I hate leaving it.
So I like to swing on them if I jump them. Mm-hmm. I'll do like a big old half loop, like depending on the topography of the area. Sometimes I'll try to get higher on them. Yeah. And if I don't meet up with them, I'll go back because I'm waiting, half an hour, 45 minutes anyway. So I feel like it's a good way to
come back to where you left it and then get back on it again. Yep.
And I've got them like that. Like one of my best bucks I ever shot. I got higher on them right after I jumped them and we met right on top.
Yep.
But it's just you play the game enough, you start to kind of get those like sixth senses about where, Yep. But I figure it's a good way to kind of keep your mind going.
Did you see a lot of evidence of nice and easy before that so that you'd say probably not going to be all that far?
Yeah, so he had went through that area twice in like a 12-hour period before. And when I jumped him off the side of the mountain, I was like, man, and it was just right below the top. I'm like, I'm going to go back up there. So I just ran as fast as I could back up where he went through 2 times. Yep. And that's right where we met.
No kidding.
He was just he did a big old loop on me. He was going to stand there and watch for me to come, But I've also done that.
Predictable.
I've done it 100 times and it hasn't worked like that. But, it only takes the one.
Right. One will do. if he makes that mistake and if he does things that are predictable, absolutely.
Right.
I've had a whole bunch of them that reacted predictably when I jumped him and just kept moving him. Mm-hmm. I had one that just kept hooking left every time.
Yep.
He was like a lefty. Yep. Like that. I've had a whole bunch that want to do a J on the downwind side and then catch me as I'm coming and of course, you try and catch the J before it happens, and that one, by the third time he'd done that, I started looking for the hook and cutting straight down. Right. Downwind, right off the bat, boom, and it made sense, especially if the visibility and the topography matched for me to go look.
Right.
And I wouldn't have to leave it too far to go have a look because, I see a hook right here, hardwoods with a dip over, let's go look. Head right over and look right over that, nice and gentle. Right. I've had a whole bunch of them that were like in the boot brush looking at me and then want to come over easy, and they did the hook, and now they're level with the boot brush where I am, and it's over the bank looking through, and they're right in that boot brush, just the ears and the head looking at me right there. And picking out, training your eyes is a big part of it, and learning to pick out little odd things. and do it kind of quick. How do you scan the woods when you're looking for a deer?
I guess left to right, looking for movement. I don't know. I usually pick out antlers first when I'm tracking, believe it or not.
No kidding.
I usually do.
Yeah. Well, you had some big horns to deal with.
Well,
right?
yeah,
So
I guess. Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I couldn't do that because I was trained on this. You're not going to see spikes.
Right? No, you're right.
Right? Right.
Amen.
I was trained on little deer, and you don't see those. So you don't look for that. You look for the white and the white on the tail, the white patch, any horizontal lines, the back. Right? You go for that kind of stuff. So, not that you don't see horns. I mean,
Right.
If they're big, you see horns. You most of the time, the woods move. When the deer moves, and you go, oh my God. Right. I saw the deer first, and then he turned his head, and the whole woods moved. Right.
Yeah.
I had a couple in New Hampshire. Just, oh my God, look at that thing. Right.
Yeah.
What I'll do is I'm walking along, and I know I need to look. I'll do a boom, real fast. I just cross country, just swing my head nice and fast. And I'm looking for the right out in the open, wide out, obvious, right there, wide open. You should have seen the damn thing, right? Yeah. I want to see the obvious stuff that's sticking right out instantly. And I want to see it as fast as possible because if we dally together at close range, they're gone, right? They're only going to give you a couple, 3 seconds. And you want to take it you need every half a second. If they're only giving you 3 seconds, you need every half second. So I'll do a real fast check, just a head flick check. The other reason I do that probably more than other people would be I can only hear out of one ear.
Really?
So I'm doing everything in what I'm doing. I hear the sound, but I can't tell where it came from. So I'm always asking the boys, where was that? And they're like, what? I just heard something. And then another little tick. And the moose stood up. Tick. And I'm like, man, I just freaking heard something. And Taylor's like, ooh, right there. It's right over here. So we look a little bit more. Sure enough, there's a moose standing there, right? I can hear real well, but I can't tell the location. From the sound. I can't triangulate.
Yep.
Not a nice little handicap. So, I'll go through nice and easy and really pick out. There's this section where a deer will exist on the landscape. There's this zone. So I go right through, and now I'm looking real good. Real good. Just a nice, thorough, is anything out of place? Is anything not look good? Any movement, anything. But I'm always doing it with the biggest possible eyes, right? The widest view, because if it moves over here, I want to see it. So I practice that, especially when I'm driving down the road. You drive down the road, and you're looking for tracks. I will scan the ditch and scan the roadside, scan the bank on the far side, look way up into the woods, but I'm doing it with the widest possible eyes, the most attention to peripheral vision. And when the partridge is over here up the bank and I'm over here looking for that, and I step on the brakes and I go, bird. And they're all like, oh my God, how did you see that? Right? It's because of the wide eyes. Yep. And wide eyes for movement. Human beings are fantastic about seeing side to side movement. We see that in our advertising and all that kind of stuff, right? Right. Use that. Any movement, anything, twitches, boom, on it, right? Looking for that movement all the time.
Ear flicker.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right? Just any little shift, any color, oddball, and anything that just what's the deal?
When you're shooting at a running deer, are you picking a spot or are you swinging, or is it situational?
Most of the time, I'm centering them in the scope and shooting. Mm-hmm. If they're real close, I don't even aim. I just point the gun at them and shoot them. Mm-hmm. I wouldn't have any trouble picking up my bolt right now and shooting that freezer. And I do it in half a second. Mm-hmm. Time it takes me to go, pow, right? So if a deer hops up at 15, 20 yards and takes off running and I've got a scope and a bolt action, there's no sense in, right? It's running with a scope on 3 power at 16 yards, right? No, you just pull up, point, just pull right up and look down that and boom. And if you practice a little bit, you'll be a shot like you read about. Mm-hmm. There's no need to aim. Mm-hmm. And I can probably hit the cardboard box over there and keep looking at you. Right? So I've had a whole bunch of them where I've shot them at point blank and didn't even aim. Just shot them. Pow.
Just instinct.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like Mr. T, right? He's threat walking me. He comes out of the bushes and he's threat walking me and he's coming and I'm in awe. He's, across the room right here. 25 feet, right? And he's coming right towards me on an angle. He weighs 220 and got a head down, and I'm in awe. Look at that. Wow, is that thing something? I'm like, well, you probably better shoot him. If you don't, and he thinks you're a buck, he's just going to kill you. And he's so close that if I shoot him, he may just kill me anyway if he doesn't die, right? Because you shoot him and they just keep coming. They don't care. Yeah. They wouldn't care. So I boom into him. The bugger comes running right at me. Oh. I grunted, and he thought, there's other deer, there's danger. I don't know what that was. Run to the other deer. Right. Yeah. So he comes right at me. And then the second shot was here to that turkey right there. You know, I shot here to the toolbox, pow, and he comes running right at me, and I went click, click, click like this, boom, and shot him again, pow, right there, right? Wow. He died 10 feet from me. Yeah, okay. What a feeling. Have 220 coming right at you, like, and threatening you, and then when you shoot him, he comes even more, right? But what do you want him to do, right?
Bet your old heart was thumping, right?
It's either that or run to the truck. I'd love him to run to the truck. If you want to run someplace after I've shot you, run to the truck. But if not, come on over near me. You know, what a feeling. But you should be able to do that. And like, just take a 22 and put a sock over your, and practice it in a gravel pile or something. Right. Pick out a rock and just practice just shooting, just pointing and shooting. Yeah. It's amazing how good you can be.
Which one of these is Mr. T?
The third one in from the end. Right there. That was the 9-year-old.
Yep.
Wow, that's a big bugger right there.
Oh my God.
And you grounded him in?
Yep.
The neck on that thing is crazy.
Yeah. What about the one right behind you? Though he's been looking at me the whole time, and I got to hear the story on that one.
Pete Wheatley and I were over on Camp 14 Road, and there was 2 huge buck tracks that were kicking around in there, and the other deer was a pretty good sized deer. I want to say 240 probably. And Pete had kind of stuck with his track, and I took him. He's long toes. I said, well, I'll take him. Our 2 deer were about probably 1.5 miles apart, and of course, where do they end up? Right in the same piece of woods. There was a doe in heat in this about 300 yard area in some hardwoods, and the 2 bucks do-si-doed around each other all night long. The snow was just rotting off by 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, and we were soon going to lose it. I tracked the buck in, and I said, well, they must have gotten in a fight. And Pete says, well, I'm looking at you right now on the radio. And I said, oh, so we're both right here. I said, I haven't found their exit yet, and I'm trying to circle this barnyard and cipher it out. So I told him, you start around that way, I'll go around this way, and we'll just, like that, we'll find out where they came out. Well, we ended up finding the fight, and of course there's blood all over the place, hair up the trees and everything else. And then the bigger one leaves with the doe. So Pete takes that and goes off, and I take the loser here up back the direction he came. It gets dark on me, and I'm all done. It didn't snow any, but under the spruces and stuff, and in the colder spots, there was still a little snow the next morning. So we go back to the same chunk of woods, and I go back to the same exact spot I left him, and he came back fresh. And I'm like, oh, attaboy, saved me. Whatever he did out there that night, don't care. Here he is, right here. So I follow him a little ways, and he kind of goes back towards the fight scene a ways and ends up across a brook and up on a little bank in a select cut. And he laid down right there. I could see the bed from about 30 yards, and I was doing what I usually do. I just walking and grunting. Nice, sunny, beautiful morning. The snow is about to rot away. You can watch it on YouTube. And I worked my way into that cut nice and easy, and I'm just looking around, and I saw the bed, and I hadn't walked over there yet. I didn't dare to, and I'm hoping he didn't run. And now I did my fast scan, and I looked right through that deer. He's about 40 yards, standing in a wide open, big as a sheet of styrofoam down there, right? 4x8 sheet. He was huge. And I went real quick, and I didn't see him. Then I went back, and I went nice and easy, and I went, oh, right there. Right? So I turn around, and I can't see from here up. All I can see is this giant body, and he's in it fairly wide open. And I get the scope on his body, and oh, that is a giant. Let's just see. Oh, yeah. I can see brow tines, right? I can see them brow tines sticking up. I don't need to see anymore. Right on the chest, pow. And he, boom, kapoof, and he falls right over. And quite a bit of brush, so I couldn't see the body anymore. And I'm just watching, and it's up on a hillside with a lot of brush, and I could easily miss him right exactly where he landed. I reload and watch, and nothing moves, and by golly, I got the bugger. It's got to be right there someplace. And I always keep a little bit of surveyor's tape ribbon in my pocket, right where I was standing.
That's smart.
I walk exactly towards the deer. I walk exactly towards it. Oh, maybe here to your truck. And I hang another ribbon up right on the spot I saw him fall. Now I've got those 2 ribbons for my bullet pack. Now we're going to go find him. So I walk up in there and I go right by him. And I go to the back of it, and 150 yards. It was only 40 yards. But I lined back up with those 2, and I said, watch this. And I went right straight back down those ribbons and walked right up to him laying right there.
Wow.
Right? That worked beautiful.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
That is a really good tip for anybody shooting at any time.
Yep.
If you've got some way of lining up in the distance, you'll be able to stay on line and get back towards where you were. I was in a little bit of a panic there because I'd gone quite a ways and I wasn't seeing anything. And I walked by him just a little bit. And I'm like, no, it's right about here. Turned around and went straight back away a little bit. Why, he was laying right just off the side a little bit, right there. You know, so what a beauty. He was a nice one.
Incredible.
Nice rack, yeah.
Yeah. And that 130-inch stuff comes pretty hard in Maine.
Yeah.
And especially where they're hunted so hard right there.
Yeah.
They're hunted hard.
Yeah.
So like 130 inches isn't easy to do, much less the 200. But him and Tote Road are both about within 1/8 of an inch each other. So my biggest rack's the 130.
That's that buck, the full body
Yes.
mount. That's
Yeah.
Tote Road.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Do you have a buck in mind that you've hunted or a tracking story in mind that you feel like taught you the most or your favorite? Do you have one in mind?
Yeah, there was
Specific
one in
buck?
Vermont. There was one in Vermont that I didn't get. And I moved him 17 times.
Wow.
And a small buck led me to him. I started on a little small basket rack 8-pointer. I got right up on a real snowy day during muzzleloader season. I got right up to about 6 or 8 yards from him, and he was on a pretty steep, rocky, rotten kind of bank. And he ran around the mountain. Once I got him up and got him on his feet, and he skirted out around the mountain, and he ran right up to a giant. The giant got up, and the 2 of them, boom, 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 for together a little ways. Then the younger one turned off and kind of headed towards home. The big one pulled up about 100 yards past where they split and was standing there. Of course, he didn't know what got the little deer up, so he didn't know the deal with me. I'm wearing snow camo, so when he saw me, he didn't really see me. It's like, what is that? I see something moving right there, but it's not real alarming. White on white is really not alarming to them. None of their predators are white. But they know something's there. They see that blur, like, and So he's standing there looking at me, and I put a bullet right underneath his neck in the snow. I was not happy. I start reloading. He just stands there. He just stands there. And I'm loading that gun up. And I put the cap on, and then he runs. Classic, right?
Every time.
Yeah.
Every time.
Jerk.
Yeah.
Take off him up the mountain. He nice and easy. Never ran real hard. Big ones don't have a reason to run real hard. Couple 100 yards and then back to boom, 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 boom. Just keep moving. He pulls up the hill, joins a brook for a little ways, does a hook and stops. And then up the hill a little farther, sees me coming, does a hook and stops. I swing a little bit, hoping on the second or third jump now, the swing I makes comes right into him. And he's doing the lefty hook, lefty hook, lefty hook nearly every time. So I'm watching for that downwind lefty hook. It just keeps doing it all the time. And now I start the terrain. He's going to do it. He wants to watch me. He wants to see me. And if I'd have slowed down a little bit, I'd have shot him. But I was too eager, too fast, a little too much. Well, if you keep hitting him and keep hitting him and bouncing him, right? You can't keep doing it. You got to shoot him, right? I learned a lot from him. Slow down and shoot him. Just go easy. You don't want to chase him all over the countryside, especially if you know he stops. And this one just kept stopping, and I didn't pick up on that. I should have been picking up on that. I did pick up on the left hooks. I started predicting the left hooks, and some of them I didn't see him in the hook, but I predicted the spot and walked right to the end of the hook. He'd go do the hook, then take off again. So there'd be this big hook in the track every time. I like to think of some of the tracking jobs from a God's eye view, looking down on it, right? Think of yourself while you're tracking a deer in a God's eye view from far above. Now, if you're about to close the distance and you were God, what would you be saying to yourself? Ooh, go easy. You're almost there. You're almost there, right? You're looking down on this situation, right? Mm-hmm. Kind of the same thing. And it also shows you a pattern. Bass bite to a pattern, right? Right? There's tons of pattern in nature, and I want to notice the pattern of this particular deer, of this particular landscape, and how I fit and how this will all come together. So I start seeing these. And what he does and why he does hooks where he does, now I can start predicting it. And I was predicting the hooks on a steady basis. And a couple of times when he really kicked it, ooh, I was close. Oh, I was close. Almost 25 yards. I got within 25 yards from him 3 different times. Right? And in a 25 yard, you should have shot him. You should have got him by then. Right? When you're 25 yards from a deer, unless it's like over a hill or something like that, you should be shooting him.
Right.
You should have seen something. You should have been. Now I'd have been, man, you're screwing up. You should have been seeing it. But that deer taught me so much. He brings me to other deer to get rid of me. I get to the other deer. He's not with them. So I move into them, and they all scatter. And I hope they don't go down the track and screw things up and alert him to what's going on. And the first time it did, right? He stands back, watches them scatter, and say, oh, here comes Rodney again, and off he goes, right? He goes, does another hook, then he goes, all of a sudden does a 90 right out of nowhere and goes up this completely wrong towards a road, no good reason to go that way. And I went, ooh, here we go. And I go up the bank, and I'm real creepy and careful, and he does a little bit of a hook. The road's coming up. Does a little bit of a hook, and I look, and there's a deer bedded right there. And I'm like, gotcha. And I put the barrel down, and it's bedded down, and it's facing straight away from me. So I just ease down, and I look at the head, and it's a 4-pointer. And I'm like, you bugger. Right? He brought me to that little buck. He smelt him from way up the hill and said, here, eat him. Yep. I looked down at that little buck. It's the last Saturday of muzzleloader season in Vermont. Now, this is a giant basin with a huge hardwood all the way up the other side. And I'm standing there, and I got that, and it's muzzleloader, right? It's the end of all seasons. He's going to die if that thing isn't here. And it's 4 o'clock. I look up on that hill, and there he goes. Ka-tunk, ka-tunk, ka-tunk. He's got to be 500 yards from me. And I can see him going up through those woods. Right? Give him the finger. Today's not your day. Pow.
And he's laughing all the way up to the spruces, probably.
And this poor little buck, right, took it in the back of the neck, never even knew it was coming. Deader than a hammer, never got out of his bed. It was over right there, and literally like 15 feet from him.
Not a bad consolation prize.
Yeah. And that's the one that taught me so much, right? The one that got away. And every deer that gets away, those are the ones that teach you.
I was just going to say
a horrendous amount. Absolutely.
The ones you get, you really aren't learning too much. I mean, I don't think it's you do, but not like the ones that get away. Those are the ones.
And I think maybe you remember it so much because it hurts.
That's what.
Yeah.
It hurts. Yeah. That big one that just walked away. Yeah. I'm screaming at him.
Yeah.
And he's walking.
Yeah.
And he can't hear me in those leaves. I'm like, hey, stop. I just want him to stop walking so I can shoot him. Please, just stop. And then when he does, it's behind a tree. And I'm watching down through 200 yards down through the hardwoods. The biggest rack I've ever seen in Vermont. Oh, it's a monster. And then he goes back to walking again. Crunch. No! And then stops again behind another tree. And I'm like, come on, just nice and easy. And I'm all ready to roll. And I can shoot. That thing should be dead. And he stays behind that tree and goes ka-tunk, ka-tunk, ka-tunk. And I listen to him run all the way up the other side, 600-700 yards away. Boom, ka-boom, ka-boom. And that one hurt. That one hurt. It hurts so much.
You think about it, man.
Oh, right. But when pain is one of the things that helps you remember.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Embrace the pain.
Yeah, exactly.
Not easily done.
No, but the tracking stories, the ones that get away, Telling you, that's where a lot of the lessons are really
burns it right in,
man.
Oh, sure. Because you don't have to go through that mistake.
Yeah.
Right? You don't have to relive that in real life.
Right.
That's the beauty of being a human being. And the best part about the memory thing, it elevates evolution faster. You get there way quicker, right? Because we can share stories. You can share experiences. Now your learning curve exponentially better. Never has there been so much tracking information on the internet ever.
Yeah.
So easily accessed at any minute.
Yep.
And it's entertaining. You can't wait to let what's going on, boom, 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 and you can watch it and you can get from it. This fella shoots a 265 first tracking job ever, 150 inches of horns. Minnesota. I want to say Minnesota, either that or Wisconsin. Goes out, shoots this monster. I did what you said. I just walked up to it and I grunted. And it just stood there, and I shot it. Thank you so much. And he sent me this picture. It's a monster. Oh, that thing, a deer of a lifetime.
Yeah.
Just, that thing's huge. And he's out in the snow with that thing, and attaboy, right? Even if one person walks away with that, that made the whole channel worth it.
Yep.
Right? It makes the whole listen to it worth it. And you got to have some takeaways.
Yep.
And the appreciation that we have for all the people who've paid so much attention to us. Like, super appreciate that, you know, and it's great, and we'll take it all. Take the criticism, take the praise, take it all. It's all the same.
Oh, yeah.
It's all the same. It's good, and we love it, and it's us, and we do as we do, and then I hope everybody does as they do, you know. And some things will do well, some things will fail, but it's okay.
Yeah.
Some things should fail, right? I had no idea all the trouble that deer would get me into. Like, if I had to make a flag, it would have a mountain on it, right? You have to climb the mountain. That's what life is. You climb mountains. I would have the tree, right? The tree is life, right? It really is, for the mountain and for the deer, right? And what I've gotten from it, there's got to be a deer on there too. I mean, geez, look what deer have done for me. They've made me somebody more malleable, more change my hat, more able to do and go and be and have fun doing it. It's my heaven. It's Donnie Vincent's heaven, right? When the caribou in the ocean waves, right? That's the heaven he's chosen, and he lives it. And anybody's miserable, they probably picked that hell. And now they're living it, right?
Yep.
If there's no actual heaven and hell and everything's here, well, and you're screwing it up, you got a problem.
Yeah.
You don't want to do that, right?
Yeah.
Change.
Yeah.
Right?
For sure.
And so just live the dream and just do it. And next thing you know, there it is. And don't take no for an answer. And next thing you know, you've got a great big deer in your hands. When Larry wrote that book, How to Get the Biggest Buck of Your Life, well, it may not work for every single person, but boy, man, did it make a difference. I couldn't put that book down. And that was the only thing out there. At the time, there was nothing else. Aside from deer camp and some fellas you knew that wanted to share things with you. That's awesome. I've gotten so much out of everybody else that if I don't do some payback,
It's a good way.
I'm not a good part of the system.
Yeah.
Right? I can do some payback.
Right.
And if people come away with something cool, that's great. And then after that, well, I guess it's kind of humbling. People come in and they start naming my deer. I don't know them.
Yeah.
It's weird. That's kind of weird for them to say, oh, this is that one and this is that one. But you go to watch Batman to be Batman for a few hours.
That's right. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
To share and be the other person for a little while because you can relate to them. And so all of us kind of relate to Larry, right?
Yep.
And his sons.
Yep.
Right? We relate to your family, right? I watch you come in with your boy.
Oh, yeah.
What a relatable thing, right? We teach a hunter safety course, right? And all the kids and everybody's in here. Some new hunters for the first time ever. Somebody who's never fired a firearm before, right? Never shot high power. And I get to go through that experience with them. What an amazing thing. I got so much because people did it with me. Gino Sassy, right? Taught me my hunter safety. You always remember that. Well, now I'm giving back a little bit. And I think all of us should be doing that. It's like a rite of passage where you give back to what you love so much. And it's about the loving it and not so much about the having or, right, needing to possess. Hunting's pretty possessive. It's what antis don't like. It's so possessive. even other hunters,
Right.
my area, right?
Yep.
You're possessing something you don't own.
He shot my buck, right?
Right? We got to get over that just a little bit. And there's more than enough.
Yeah.
That wall is proof. There's more than enough good buck out there.
Oh, yeah.
There's one for everybody
Yeah.
who wants to shoot one.
Right.
There really is.
Puts the time in.
And there's more.
Oh, yeah.
There's more than that. Nature is loaded with abundance. It's an abundance theme, not a lack theme. There's some days I'm not real proud of the human race.
Right.
We're supposed to be intelligent here.
Yeah.
My God.
I used to get discouraged when I was a little kid, when a lot of people like around my area would be shooting bucks, and my dad would always tell me, he's like, "They'll never get them all, bud. They'll never get them all." And you know what? It's true.
It is.
You know, it's easy to get discouraged whenever, Timmy shot a big buck, and then John got a big buck, and then, the other person down the road got one. It's real easy to fall into that, getting all depressed and whatnot. But
easy to identify with.
Yeah.
And then you ask yourself, do I really identify with that? Am I really a loser because I hunted for a whole month straight and only saw 5 deer? No. You hunted a month straight.
Yeah.
In some of the worst places to even try and kill a deer, much less walk.
Right.
The walking, my God. Right? Yeah. But we managed, right? In those cold days of getting out of bed, right? You have to measure your success at a level that represents you. Mm-hmm. And if you're not happy, well, that's your fault.
That's right.
You don't like what you're shooting, that's your fault. You got to take credit for it. Don't give yourself hell for it. Right? But take credit for some of your problems. You caused them.
Yeah. For
I
sure.
posted all my land and somebody stole my camera. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Whose fault's that?
Yep.
Right? When you know it happens.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
And you may expect different, but if you put your expectations on others, now you're really screwed. And if your feelings are all in that department too, and you're an anti, and you can't wrestle your own feelings, how's that going to work out for you, right?
Sure.
Yep. If you make others responsible for how you feel, you're in trouble. You'll feel bad most of your life because they won't come through. They won't come through for you. That's right.
Yep.
Right. Yep. And you can't measure yourself by those means. The identifying, right, is a big thing. And you don't want to identify too closely all the time with everything. Mm-hmm. I do my best not to do that. Yeah, I'm Rodney Elmer today, but I could very easily be somebody else, right? We practiced that when we were kids. We pretended, right? You drove, I'm the dump truck driver, you're the grader driver, right? So you play that role, and now you're empathetic, not only to the bear and what he goes through, but to the houndsman, right? You're empathetic to the person who's feeling bad and the person who's not caring.
Yeah.
You can understand both sides of that. Now you're open, right? And when you got an open mind and an open heart, that's how you hunt. Every Indian in the world always said you need an open heart.
Yep.
Right? Not this mean, cruel, closed up thing.
Yeah.
Right? I watch hunting and I see it in every form possible, and there's days I just shake my head. Mm-hmm. Some of the faces that it has need improving. Mm-hmm. And we're better than that in a lot of ways. What are you going to do?
I got one more question for you, then we'll kind of wrap it up from there.
Sure.
What would you say, so all the years you've hunted and stuff, what do you think it is that you appreciate most about big woods hunting and tracking? What do you think it is?
I try not to have that bring tears, right? The freedom, right? The deer is not penned up by anything. Those landmarks, they don't matter.
Yeah.
Right? The absolute freedom coupled with my ability to handle anything that comes along. Right? Don't you want to be able to handle anything that comes along, no matter what? You're a master of all.
Yeah.
Right? We all want to be able to do that. I want to be able to handle everything a deer throws at me, everything the weather throws at me, everything my heart throws at me. I want to be able to handle it all and be the master of me. And as soon as I'm the master of me, now the outside bends to me all the time. And the deer just stands there. The snow comes. My friends kill deer. Right? Right? It all starts lining up. Now it's meaningful, right? You want it to be meaningful. If it's not and it's superficial, man, what good's that? Yeah. So the freedom right? I like to think of myself as a wolf. There's all kinds of different predators. The cat stalks, right? The owl, right? The tree stand, right? I want to just walk out into that herd of buffalo and just shove them a little bit and then just, let's see who's feeling good today. Let's stretch our legs a little bit. Ba-boom, a little more. Ba-boom, a little more. Oh, you, right here. Boom, right? And the bison's laying there, and everybody else comes running up, and everybody else feels good, right? I want to be a wolf. Don't want to be chained down. Make my own decisions. Go where I please. Do as I please. But treat it all like it's mine, like I care about it.
Yep.
It has to, and that part is crucial. That I treat it like it's mine. Not that it's mine away from you, but it's mine. And I'm only here for a little while, but I get to use it. And I would not throw my candy wrappers out at 3,000 feet. It ain't happening just because nobody's watching. Wouldn't do that kind of stuff. I'd pick up the beer can so that I can get it back down to the truck. So the next time I go back up there, I don't have to look at that, the balloon, right? So when I treat it as mine and I don't go digging it all up and don't drive where I'm not supposed to and share it with everybody else, that's what keeps it valuable for me. And wildness needs a place in man. I kind of like wild people. I've met a whole bunch of them since COVID. I've met a whole bunch of domestic ones too.
Oh, yeah.
Right? I want somebody who thinks for themselves. I want my children sharp, noticing, paying attention, seeing what's going on and going, oh, somebody's out here.
Yep.
Right? They notice there's 4 trucks out here today. Right? We're driving up the road at 40 miles an hour and my kids can look out and say, looks like 4 rigs out here today. Maybe 5. Go a little farther. There's the 5th one. Right? I like that, right? To notice that kind of Sherlock Holmes, the investigation, the adventure of the unknown. I don't want to see what that deer looks like. I could care less. I don't care what it looks like. Doesn't matter. I don't care how many of them are in there or whatever. I don't claim any of them. There's a couple I'd like to shoot. We've got a little history. I'd like to line up with that thing, but it might not be mine. Got to be careful, right? So I'll go mining and go looking. I like that adventure that it brings. I like the unknown. Unknown plays a huge role. If we had everything our way, what would we end up wanting? If you got your every wish, after a while, you would wish for no more wishes. Right? Because you're learning to master what you've got going on, right? There's a philosophy to it that will work ingeniously over and over for nearly everyone if you just apply it. And you learn that through that wildness. We need our wild. We need wild places. We need kind of wild people in a way. Responsible, right? You still got to be responsible to yourself and to the other fellows you hunt with and to the world and to nature, right? Give back, be part of a working system. I like what works. I listen to enough crap all the time of what doesn't work. It's foolishness. Right? This is a logic, science-based universe. This is how planet Earth works. You dream, you take the appropriate action at the right time, and the miracle is in your hands. Your pickup truck or anything you ever got in your whole life, you dreamt about it, you did the right things, and it's in your hands. Okay, this is planet Earth. That's how it works. If you use it and apply it to everything you do, and you don't take no for an answer, next thing you know,
there.
You got it.
Come to it,
Right? And if you keep it that simple, keep it wide and simple, keep tracking simple, it's simple, it's easy. Follow the deer, walk up to it and shoot it. You may have to move him 3 times. You may have to get him in the right spot for you to be able to do that. But hey, that's part of the game. You didn't turn it down. You just kept after it. Next thing you know, oh, there it is.
Boom. Yep.
That's a good way to put it. Yeah.
What more could keep your spirits up? What more could lay the deer down? What more could you be satisfied with than you predicting what's going to happen and then it comes true?
Right.
Or what you wanted not only came true, but you got extra, right? Somebody else was there. It wasn't the deer you thought it was an even better one, right? Like extra comes along all the time. Be ready to accept all gifts with open arms. I'll take them if they want to stand there.
You've got us all fired up right now. We got to wait like a few more months. So this isn't even.
And I'm trying not to think about deer season. I'm not ready. I don't have my stuff ready. I got too much to do. I try not to get wound up about deer hunting.
Yeah.
But it's hard not to, especially when you talk about it.
Oh, yeah.
And when it does mean so much to you. In the future, I will probably stop hunting. It's coming. It's coming for me one day. Like when you mastered the ABCs, do you do your ABCs anymore? Not really. Like when you've gotten all you could kind of wring out of it, now it won't be me so much, right?
Right.
You become the guide, right?
Yeah.
And then eventually, like maybe somebody will help guide you on to the next adventure, right? Because we're all headed there. Life is short.
For sure.
And it's a big deal when you kill something. You take the life out of something. It's a big deal. It should be.
Yep.
Well,
we want to thank you for being the ambassador that you are, and not just you, your whole family, and everything you guys have done and continue to do. Not just the videos, but the helping out with fish and game, teaching hunter safety.
It's been crazy.
Putting the message out there. We really appreciate it.
Well,
so
I'm glad you do, and we appreciate everybody's love for things, right? And it's a good thing to be part of something so awesome. And you guys are the next ones to hand over, right? The new tree in the cut. And the old yellow birch in the back that's still kind of standing there. That's me, right? Me and Hal, right? The old birch in the back, right?
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. And that's the way it goes.
Yeah.
Right? All things. And I don't expect my reflection to stay on the lake, right? I don't expect it to, and it shouldn't. Nobody lives forever. Nobody should live forever. Bottom line is you should come and go and do it gracefully, and I want to do it gracefully. And when you share how Mark Shireen and I were talking the other day, and we were talking about how there's like a collectiveness to all of us who kind of do this. We're kind of different from a lot of other hunting cats out there, right?
That's true.
And there's a lot of value in it, and we need to find ways to articulate that.
For sure.
And you have to break new ground in order to say why you do what you do, and the good that it could do others in society and nature as a whole, right? We want to appeal to everybody. And you guys are doing the same thing, and it's awesome. And keep it up.
Will do.
Sweet.
Don't give up hunting too soon.
No. Let's be real.
Keep on, a few more 200-pounders in the eye.
Yeah.
It may be difficult.
When
they're standing there, especially.
Yeah, right.
That's true. Yeah. So if you guys want to see more Rodney and his boys there, subscribe to them on YouTube, Mountain Deer.
Yep.
And there's a pile of good videos, good content on there. So you guys should go soak that up. And I guess we'll wrap this one up. You guys have anything else?
Thank you.
Yeah, sounds
Appreciate
awesome.
it.
Yep.
Thanks a lot.
We'll see you guys on the next one.
Have a great weekend. Good luck hunting this fall, you guys.
Sweet.
Thanks for listening to this episode. We hope you enjoyed it. It was a lot of fun to sit down with Rodney and record it. Just want to say, if you want to continue to help us support and grow this show, go to STAGR's YouTube channel and subscribe on there. Follow us or like us on our social media pages, or go to www.staggergear.com and pick up some gear for this upcoming deer season. We really appreciate the support, and we'll see you guys on the next episode.